What if I told you that the heavier you are, the slower you age? People think time is just a ticking clock in the background of the universe, a universal metronome that treats everyone and everything exactly the same. That's not a little wrong. That is fundamentally, structurally, embarrassingly wrong. Here is the secret the universe is hiding from you. The atoms in your feet are literally younger than the atoms in your brain. Why? Because the mass of the Earth is holding them closer, dragging them through time at a slower speed. Matter literally acts as a prison for the flow of time. Every time you pick up a heavy backpack, every time you gain weight, you are quite literally hitting the brakes on your personal timeline. You have felt this drag your entire life without ever having the words for it. Today I'm going to prove to you that matter isn't just stuff taking up space. It is a physical trap for time itself. And once you see the mechanism, your concept of reality will completely collapse. Let me show you. Close your eyes and imagine a massive glowing block of iron, heavy, dense. Now imagine time as a steady invisible wind blowing past it. People say time is a river that flows smoothly around everything. But that's just a label, a comforting lie. Wrong. Time doesn't flow around mass. It gets caught in it, tangled, stretched. Here's the part nobody tells you. Matter behaves like a sponge for seconds and minutes. The more mass you stack up, the more time gets soaked up and sluggish. If a grain of sand were the size of a mountain, the time around it wouldn't just tick, it would wobble. It would physically snap and drag. You look at a rock and see a solid object. I look at a rock and see a localized time distortion. Stop. Think about what that actually means. It means your reality is fractured. The time you experience is completely different from the time the person sitting next to you experiences. But how does a lump of dead matter actually grab hold of an invisible second? Now watch what this implies for the very next moment of your life. Let me ask you a simple, childish question. What time is it right now? You look down at your phone, you see a digital number glowing. You think that number represents a universal reality. Wrong. There is no universal now. The concept of now is a complete hallucination. Every single time you say the word now, you are only describing the time inside your specific, highly localized mass bubble. Look across the room. Think of someone you know standing over there. If they are standing even a few inches further from the center of the Earth than you are, their now is completely different from your now. Why? Because time is literally thicker and stickier at the bottom of a gravity well. This is where your intuition completely fails. We are trained from birth to think that a second is a second is a second, a fixed unit. But let me tell you about the moment I realized this was a lie. I was watching a heavy brass grandfather clock, the pendulum swinging, tick-tock. I suddenly understood that the bottom of the pendulum was physically aging slower than the top. People say time is a straight arrow flying forward, but that's just a label. Time is actually a topography. It has invisible hills and deep valleys. A heavy object creates a literal valley in the fabric of time. When you stand next to a mountain, you are stepping into a puddle of slow time. Wait, let that sink in for a second. The heavier the physical object, the deeper the temporal puddle. If the Earth were compressed to the size of a golf ball, its mass wouldn't change, but its density would pinch time so violently it would practically snap in half. You might say, but I don't feel time slowing down when I pick up a heavy box. Exactly. You don't feel it because your brain is trapped inside the exact same slow-motion bubble. You cannot see the cage if your own eyes are made of the cage. Here is the part nobody tells you. Your entire existence is a constant, desperate climb out of a temporal ditch. Mass is pulling reality down, dragging your precious seconds with it. Every ounce of mass creates a tiny prison cell for the future. But how does a physical object bend an invisible second? That sounds impossible until you see the trick. Close your eyes and imagine the most famous analogy in all of physics: a heavy bowling ball sitting directly in the middle of a soft, bouncy trampoline. You've seen this 100 times. People say gravity is a curve in space, but that's just a label. They always show you the bowling ball bending the fabric of space. They never show you the other half. Wrong. The bowling ball isn't just bending space, it is violently stretching time. Look at the trampoline again, but this time imagine the fabric isn't made of rubber. Imagine the fabric is made of pure, flowing seconds and minutes. When you drop that heavy ball into the center, the seconds get stretched out. They get longer. A second near the bowling ball literally takes more time to pass than a second near the edge. This is where your intuition fails. You think a second is a fixed ruler, but matter makes the ruler elastic. The heavier the bowling ball, the more it stretches the seconds. Let me say that again. Mass stretches time. It pulls a single second until it's distorted and sluggish. If you roll a marble past the bowling ball, it curves inward. You think the marble is falling into a gravity well. But wait, it gets crazier. The marble isn't just falling into a spatial dip, it is falling into a temporal slowdown. The side of the marble closest to the heavy ball is experiencing time slower than the far side. This difference in time creates a literal drag, a physical turning force. You think you are being pulled down by a force called gravity. But what if I told you there is no pull? What if I told you gravity is entirely an illusion, created by the uneven flow of time? Think about this. You are a physical object. The Earth is a physical object. The Earth's massive bulk is sitting on the temporal trampoline, stretching out all the seconds near its surface. Your feet are in slower time than your head. This tiny gradient of time across your body is the only reason you don't float away. But how does a difference in time literally push you into the dirt, right? Wrong. That's not an answer. Hold on to that thought because it's about to get weird. People say gravity pulls you to the ground, but that's just a label, a comforting bedtime story. Wrong. Gravity isn't a magnet pulling you down. Gravity is time pushing you around. This is where your intuition totally fails. You feel a physical tug on your body, so you assume there's an invisible rope. There is no rope. There is only a time difference. Try this right now. Hold your hand flat in front of you. Imagine the bottom of your hand is moving through thick mud, while the top is moving through thin air. What happens? The bottom drags. The top rushes ahead. Your hand naturally tilts and plunges downward. Exactly. Now watch what this implies. Everything in the universe wants to move through time in a perfectly straight line. But when you stand on Earth, your feet are closer to a giant mass than your head. The mass of the Earth stretches the time around your shoes. Your feet are literally trapped in slower time. Your head is in faster time. So, as your body travels into the future, your head is moving slightly faster than your feet. Your personal timeline physically twists. You bend downward. You crash into the floor. Look closely at what the math is screaming at us. We call that crash gravity, but it's just your body twisting into the slowest available time slot. If a car were driving on a highway, and the left tires hit deep mud while the right tires stayed on smooth pavement, the whole car would violently swerve left. Mass is the mud. Time is the highway. You are the car. Stop. Think about what that actually means. You aren't heavy because the Earth is pulling you. You are heavy because the Earth's mass is distorting your future, forcing you to constantly steer into the dirt. This changes everything. You aren't stuck to the planet. You are stuck in the planet's time mud. The denser the matter, the thicker the mud, the harder the invisible twist. So far, we've learned that mass stretches out time, and that slowdown creates the physical illusion of a downward pull. But what is actually happening inside the atoms of that matter? How does a chunk of rock physically act as a sponge for seconds? Here's the part nobody tells you. It's not just a curve. It's a literal prison cell. Let me show you how matter locks time in a cage. People say matter is just stuff taking up space, but that's just a label. Wrong. Matter is exactly like a sponge sitting at the bottom of a river of time, soaking up the current. Here's the part nobody tells you. The more mass you cram into a tiny volume, the more time gets tangled up and stuck inside the sponge. Close your eyes and imagine a massive block of pure gold, dense, heavy, and silent. Now watch what this implies. If you could see the seconds flowing past that block of gold, you wouldn't see a smooth stream. You would see the seconds getting caught on the edges, dragging along the surface, warping around the immense density of the atoms inside. The heavier the block, the deeper the time drag, the thicker the prison walls. This is where your intuition totally fails. You think matter is solid, but at the atomic level, matter is mostly empty space. It is a vibrating, chaotic cloud of energy. That energy, that mass, physically pulls the fabric of space-time inward like a whirlpool. A single atom is a tiny whirlpool in time. A block of gold is a massive spinning vortex. The Earth is a cosmic-scale hurricane of slow time. Let me tell you about the time I truly understood this. I was holding a small piece of lead in my hand. It was heavy for its size. I realized that heaviness was the feeling of time physically warping around the lead. Stop. Think about what that actually means. It means every physical object you own is actively slowing down the universe around it. Your car, your house, the shoes on your feet. They are all tiny prisons, locking away fragments of the future. If a feather were the size of the moon, it would barely dent the flow of time because its mass is so spread out. But compress a star down to the size of a city, and time practically stops. The sponge becomes a solid wall, right? Wrong. It's not just a wall for the star, it's a wall for you. The Earth is a giant sponge for time, and you are standing right in the middle of the deepest part of the puddle. This changes everything. Your body isn't just sitting in space, it is wading waist deep through a temporal swamp. But wait, it gets crazier. You are a physical object too. You have mass. You are your own tiny time sponge. And because you are trapped inside Earth's giant sponge, your body is being stretched across two different flows of time right now. Let me say that again. Two different flows of time, right now, in your own body. Look closely at what the math is screaming at us about your own physical body. Here's the part nobody tells you. Your body isn't aging at the same speed. People say time passes equally for your whole body, but that's just a label. Wrong. Your head is physically older than your feet. Right now, as you sit here. This is where your intuition totally fails. You feel like a single solid object traveling through a single moment. But you are standing inside the Earth's giant time sponge. The bottom of the sponge, right at the planet's surface, is the thickest, slowest part. Your feet are stuck deep inside that slow, thick mud of time. Your head is 5 or 6 feet higher. It's slightly closer to the top of the mud. So your head is moving through time just a tiny microscopic fraction faster than your shoes. Now watch what this implies. Over the course of your entire life, your brain is literally pulling ahead of your toes into the future. If you live to be 80 years old, your face is a few billionths of a second older than your ankles. Stop. Think about what that actually means. It means your body is a time machine stretched across a gradient. Let me tell you about the moment I first learned this. I was standing on a balcony looking down. I suddenly realized my head was aging faster than the people on the sidewalk below me. Every time you climb a flight of stairs, you step into a faster time zone. Every time you sit on the floor, you plunge deeper into the slow-motion puddle. You think you are just moving through space. But wait, it gets crazier. You are constantly physically migrating through different speeds of time just by standing up. If a skyscraper were the size of a solar system, the time difference between the lobby and the penthouse wouldn't be microscopic. It would be years. You could work in the lobby for a decade and take the elevator up to find your boss has aged 50 years. Right? Wrong. That's not science fiction. That's the exact same math happening inside your own body right now. Look closely at what the math is screaming at us. We can actually measure this difference. We have physical proof that your head is living in the future compared to your feet. But how do you measure a billionth of a second? That sounds impossible until you see the trick. Let me show you the machine that proves reality is warped every single day. You might say, but I don't feel my head aging faster. Exactly. You don't feel it. But the technology running your entire life feels it every single second. People say GPS is just a satellite bouncing signals, but that's just a label. Wrong. GPS is a time machine wrapped around the Earth. It constantly fights the slowing effects of matter. Here's the part nobody tells you. The satellites floating high above your head are outside the thickest part of the Earth's time sponge. They are orbiting 12,500 miles up in space, completely free from the heaviest drag of the mud. Now watch what this implies. Up there, time literally flows faster. Those satellites age about 45 microseconds faster every single day compared to the phone in your pocket. This is where your intuition totally fails. You think 45 microseconds is nothing. But wait, it gets crazier. If we didn't program those satellites to deliberately slow down their own internal clocks, your map app would fail completely. In just one day, that tiny time difference would throw off your location by 7 miles. Stop. Think about what that actually means. If a city map were a grid, you would be lost instantly. You would pull into a coffee shop and your phone would think you were driving into a lake. The math is physically screaming at us that gravity is just warped time. Let me tell you about the engineers who built this system. They had to choose between trusting Isaac Newton or trusting Albert Einstein. They thought relativity was a theory, a math trick, right? Wrong. They turned the system on without the time correction just to see what would happen. The system completely broke. Reality collapsed. They literally had to inject slow motion into the satellite clocks to match the heavy, dragged-down time you live in on Earth. Every time you get directions home, you are literally proving that mass is a cage for time. Look closely at what the math is screaming at us. Your entire world only functions because we understand exactly how much the Earth's mass slows down a second. But what if you didn't stop at the Earth? What if you kept adding mass? What happens when the sponge gets so dense that the time drag becomes infinite? That sounds impossible until you see the trick. Here's the part nobody tells you. There is a limit to how much mass you can stack up before the sponge completely crushes time out of existence. People say black holes suck everything in, but that's just a label. Wrong. A black hole doesn't suck. A black hole is the ultimate time prison where time completely stops dead. This is where your intuition totally fails. You think you can just keep adding weight forever. But wait, it gets crazier. If you take a star exactly as heavy as our sun and compress it to the size of a city, you get a neutron star. The time on its surface is already stretched to the breaking point. A year there would feel completely different. Now watch what this implies. If you squeeze that same mass even smaller, down to a single point, reality breaks. The density is infinite. The mass is so intense that the sponge doesn't just soak up time, it swallows it whole. Stop. Think about what that actually means. It means that at the very edge of a black hole, the event horizon, time itself freezes. Let me tell you about the moment I first understood this horrifying truth. I watched an animation of an astronaut falling into a black hole. If you watched your best friend fall into one, they would never look like they crossed the edge. To you, standing safely away in normal time, they would freeze forever like a photograph fading slowly. But to them, they would cross in an instant. Right? Wrong. That's the terrifying part. Look closely at what the math is screaming at us. Inside the black hole, the downward pull is so vicious that space and time literally swap roles. You think space is all around you, and time only goes forward. But inside the event horizon, the mass is pulling so hard that space becomes an arrow pulling you into the singularity, and time becomes a location. Let me say that again. Space becomes an arrow, time becomes a location. Your entire future collapses into one physical point of infinite mass. That sounds impossible until you see the trick. But this raises the most profound question in all of physics. If mass can control time with such absolute power, does time itself have mass? Here's the part nobody tells you. If mass completely controls time, then does time physically weigh something? People say time is just a concept in your mind, but that's just a label. Wrong. Time behaves almost exactly like physical matter. It interacts with the physical universe in a way that suggests it has a literal, measurable drag. This is where your intuition totally fails. You think you are carrying the weight of a heavy object. But wait, it gets crazier. What if the weight you feel is just the immense pressure of warped time physically leaning against your bones? Now watch what this implies. When you measure the mass of a galaxy, the math doesn't work. Astronomers stare at spinning galaxies and calculate how heavy they must be to hold together. The visible stars aren't enough, not even close. Stop. Think about what that actually means. There is an invisible weight holding every galaxy together, tearing our formulas apart. We call it dark matter, a convenient placeholder for our profound ignorance. But let me tell you about a wild, beautiful theory that some physicists are whispering about. What if dark matter isn't a new kind of invisible particle? What if dark matter is just the physical weight of trapped time? If the universe itself is stretching and expanding, creating more space and more time, could that sheer volume of warped time create the exact gravitational drag we measure? Look closely at what the math is screaming at us. We are literally surrounded by an ocean of invisible mass that acts like a sponge, slowing the rotation of stars. Right? Wrong. It's not a sponge. It's the water itself. Let me say that again. Time might not just be a consequence of mass. Time might actually generate mass. Every second that ticks past the Earth might leave a microscopic physical imprint of weight on the fabric of reality. That sounds impossible until you see the trick. But what does this all mean for you, sitting right here, reading this on a tiny rock flying through the cosmos? Everything we've talked about so far leads to one terrifying, beautiful conclusion. Your entire concept of reality is about to collapse. Here's the part nobody tells you. Your entire life has been a comforting lie, agreed upon by everyone around you. People say we all share the exact same reality, but that's just a label. Wrong. There is no universal clock. There is no shared present moment. So far we've learned that mass is a literal prison for time. That gravity is just an illusion created by your body constantly slipping into slower, heavier seconds. Now watch what this implies. Every time you hug someone you love, your timelines physically bend around each other. Your mass warps their time. Their mass warps yours. This is where your intuition totally fails. You think physics is just cold, dead math. But wait, it's not just an equation on a chalkboard. It's the profound, beautiful truth that your mere existence physically alters the flow of the universe. Stop. Think about what that actually means. You are a walking, breathing time distortion. When you look up at the night sky, you aren't just looking into the past. You are looking through billions of invisible, overlapping time sponges. Every star, every planet, every grain of cosmic dust is dragging and pulling at the fabric of reality. Look closely at what the math is screaming at us. We are all just heavy lumps of stardust, trapping tiny bubbles of time, desperately trying to sync up our clocks before the time runs out. Right? Exactly. If this shattered how you see the world, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to keep tearing apart the illusions you call everyday life, one video at a time. Liking this video pushes this mind-bending truth to someone else trapped in the mud. Let me leave you with this one final thought. The next time you drop a heavy stone and watch it hit the dirt, don't think about gravity pulling it down. Think about the future, physically rushing up to meet it.